What if the woman you rescued from a burning wreck turned out to be the wife of the man who destroyed your life? And what if, just as you're learning to breathe again, she's the one thing that could burn it all down or save you? If stories like this stir something in you, pain, hope, second chances, then hit that like button and subscribe. We tell stories that stay, not perfect ones, real ones. The rain had been falling for hours. Lucas Brody stood ankle-deep in the mud, hands wrapped around the worn handle of a shovel, his breath rising in quiet puffs. The old orchard stretched out before him. 20 trees once, now only one remained. Dead. Twisted branches stretched to the gray sky like fingers reaching for something that would never return. He hadn't cut it down. Couldn't. His wife had planted that tree. Back when this land was full of plans and promise, before the fire, before the lawsuit, before silence swallowed the house, Lucas stabbed the shovel into the earth and leaned on it, letting the rain beat against his back. The cold didn't bother him. Not anymore. He was 39 and had lost everything a man was supposed to protect. His wife. His home. His name. Then he heard it. A metallic scream tore through the sky. Low, sudden, and wrong. Lucas turned sharply, squinting through the sheets of rain. A trail of smoke snaked across the clouds, dipping lower, faster, until it vanished beyond the ridge of his field. Seconds later, impact. A sickening crunch, then silence. His legs moved before his mind could catch up. He dropped the shovel and sprinted. Boots sucked at the mud. His heart pounded in his chest like it hadn't in years. Not since the morning they pulled her body from the fire. Not since the court order pinned him to failure. He crested the hill and saw it, a small plane, crumpled in the field like a bird with its wings torn off. Smoke hissed from the engine. One wing was half buried in a ditch. The rain hissed as it hit hot metal. And there, just beside the wreck, a woman lay motionless in the mud. Lucas stopped cold. She was young, 30, maybe less. Her clothes were soaked and torn, streaked with blood and rain. One arm bent at an awkward angle, the other clutched something tight against her chest. Her head was turned just slightly toward him. Even from yards away he could see the gash, across her temple. Her hair, dark with water, clung to her cheeks like vines. He should have called for help, turned around, gone back to the house. This wasn't his problem, but his boots moved forward anyway. Lucas knelt beside her, mud seeping into his jeans. He hesitated. His hands hovered above her body, unsure. It had been so long since he'd touched another person. Really touched them. Not a handshake at the feed store or a nod at church, but human contact. Fragile. Real. "Ma'am?" he asked softly. No response. He touched her neck. Pulse. Faint. Still there. His fingers brushed hers as he tried to pry away what she was clutching. A paper. No. A letter. Soaked and clinging to her skin like it belonged there. She wouldn't let go, even unconscious. Lucas looked at her face again. She wasn't just hurt. She was scared, even in sleep. Her brow was furrowed like she was still bracing for something worse. He exhaled once, slow and heavy. Then he slipped his arms beneath her and lifted. She was lighter than expected. Her body folded into his chest like it was something she'd done before, like she belonged there. He didn't let himself think too hard about that. The walk back to the house was long. The rain made every step harder. She didn't stir, didn't cry out. Only her shallow breaths told him she was still here, still fighting. He crossed the porch, nudged open the door with his boot, and stepped inside. The cabin was quiet. A single-room house with old beams and too many ghosts. The fire had long gone out in the hearth. Dust clung to everything. The only thing untouched was the rocking chair, his wife's, which he passed without looking. He laid the woman down on the worn sofa near the stove. She shivered. Lucas grabbed a blanket from the linen chest, his wife's old knit throw, and draped it over the woman. He hesitated a second before tucking it gently under her chin. The lights flickered. He moved to the corner of the room and lit the wood stove. It crackled slowly, reluctant to wake. But the warmth started to spread. Back at the sofa, the woman shifted, a quiet moan. Her eyelids fluttered open. She stared at him, not with panic, but with the blank, haunted look of someone who had run out of places to run. "You're safe," Lucas said, his voice rough from disuse. She blinked, looked around, then back at him. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but only a whisper came out. "Where?" "My place," he said. "I found you out there. You crashed." Her eyes closed again, as if those words were confirmation of something she already knew. Lucas sat on the old wooden chair across from her. He rubbed the mud from his hands, watching the fire build. The room was quiet but full, filled with breath, with tension, with something fragile balancing between them. He noticed her hand still curled tightly over the letter. Whatever it said, it had kept her alive. He didn't ask her name. Not yet. Didn't tell her his either. That night, the rain kept falling, soft against the roof, constant as a lullaby. And for the first time in years, Lucas Brody wasn't alone in the house. The next morning brought a pale light, flat and colorless. Rain still tapped against the window panes. In steady rhythm, it hadn't stopped. Lucas wasn't sure if it ever would. He stood in the kitchen, bare feet on cold wood, listening to the fire sputter in the stove behind him. His hands moved automatically, old habits, setting a kettle to boil, cracking 2 eggs into a cast, iron skillet, folding toast in a towel to keep warm. Behind him, the stranger stirred. He didn't turn. The woman hadn't spoken much the night before. Just 2 words. "Where?" And then silence. She had drifted into sleep not long after that, her face turned toward the fire, the blanket rising and falling gently with each breath. Now, she sat up slowly, the blanket clutched around her shoulders. Her eyes moved carefully, taking in the room, then the man standing at the stove back to her. Lucas finally turned. Her gaze met his. No fear, no gratitude either. Just watchfulness, like a deer not yet sure whether it's safe to run. He nodded once. "You hungry?" A pause, then quietly, "Yes, thank you." He brought over a plate, scrambled eggs, dry toast, and a chipped mug of weak tea. She accepted it with a nod, holding the plate in both hands like it might vanish. Lucas sat down in the rocker across the room, watching her from the corner of his eye. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. Whatever storm she'd crawled out of hadn't cleared. You could see it in the way her shoulders tensed every time the wind hit the house. She didn't eat much, a few bites, a sip or 2 of tea. Then her hands went to her lap, fumbling with the blanket. Her voice came softer now. "You're the one who found me." He nodded. "How far?" "Maybe 2 miles from here. You came down just past the north field." She closed her eyes for a second. "The engine started smoking over the hills. I thought I could make it to the coast." "You didn't," Lucas said simply. A shadow of a smile tugged at her mouth. "No, I didn't." The silence between them settled again. But it wasn't hostile, just quiet, the kind that comes between 2 people who haven't figured out if they're supposed to speak yet. Lucas shifted in his chair. "Name's Lucas Brody. This was my wife's place. I still live here." She looked at him a long moment and then, like offering a fragile truce, said, "Claire." He waited, but she didn't offer a last name. He didn't push. "How's the arm?" he asked, motioning to where her sleeve had been hastily tied with a strip of cloth. Claire looked down. "Sore. Probably just bruised. Nothing broken." "Lucky. I've been luckier." Lucas stood, moved to the sink, started rinsing out the mugs. He didn't like the way her words settled in the air, like stones, small but heavy. Something in her tone made it clear. She hadn't been found by accident. She had been running. She looked at him suddenly. "You didn't call the police?" "No." "A beat. Why?" Lucas turned the water off. dried his hands. I've had enough people poking around this land the last few years. Didn't seem urgent. Claire didn't argue. She just nodded, slow and thoughtful. Maybe she didn't want the police called either. Her hand moved to her side. The letter. It was still there, tucked in her jacket pocket. Lucas saw her glance at it, then quickly look away. "Whatever you're running from," he said, keeping his voice even. "You brought it here." Claire tensed. Her fingers tightened on the cup. "I didn't mean to." Lucas didn't respond right away. He walked to the window, looked out at the field. The tree was still there, bare and broken. Rain slipping down its trunk like tears. "You should rest up," he said after a while. "I've got a cot in the back room. You can stay a day or two. After that..." Claire looked up. "After that?" "I don't know yet," Lucas admitted. He turned to leave, pausing in the doorway to the hall. He didn't meet her eyes this time. "You're not the first person to crash here," he added, "but you might be the first I've let stay." He left her there, sitting small beneath the heavy blanket, staring into the fire like she could see something in it she wasn't ready to name. Outside, the rain came down harder. In the barn, the tools waited like ghosts of a former life. The apple tree bent under the weight of the storm, unmoving but not yet fallen. Lucas thought of her hands, the way she clutched that letter like it held her soul. He didn't trust her, but God help him. He didn't want her to leave either. The storm let up by morning. It didn't stop. Storms rarely did out here, but it softened, gentled to a gray mist that clung low over the grass and made everything seem suspended. Time, breath, thought. Lucas stood on the porch, hands wrapped around a mug of bitter coffee, staring out across the back field. The orchard sloped away in hushed lines. The dead tree stood like a sentry. Behind him, inside, the house creaked. Not in warning, but in memory. Claire was awake. He'd heard the soft thud of her steps on the floorboards. Light, careful. She walked like someone who'd lived in too many places that weren't hers. Lucas stayed outside a moment longer than necessary. He wasn't ready yet. Not for questions, not for conversation, not for her eyes, which always seemed to carry more history than he could guess at. When he finally stepped back inside, the house smelled faintly of tea. Claire sat at the kitchen table, her fingers wrapped around the same chipped mug from yesterday. The letter was gone from her hand, folded away again. "I made some," she said quietly, motioning to the pot. Lucas nodded and poured himself a cup. He took the seat across from her, the silence settling between them like an old coat. Familiar, if not comfortable. Then she said, "I cleaned up the back room." He looked up. Slowly. "What back room?" "The one next to the little hallway. I thought maybe it was storage, but it looked like someone used to sleep there." Lucas stared at her for a long time. The fire behind them popped, sending a small spark to the hearthstone. "You went in there?" She blinked. Yes, I didn't mean to pry. The door wasn't locked. I just thought maybe it could be a better place to sleep than the cot. There's a window and the light." "You don't go in that room," he said, quiet, but with a sudden sharpness that made her flinch. She set the mug down carefully. Her voice softened. "I didn't know." Lucas stood too fast. The chair scraped against the floor. He didn't know what to do with his hands, so he shoved them into his pockets and stared at the wall, jaw tight. "That was my wife's room," he said finally. "Ours, before the fire." Claire's face changed. Not to fear, not pity, but something closer to understanding. She bowed her head. "I'm sorry, Lucas." He nodded once. "I should have locked it, that's on me." "No," she said, standing too slowly. "It's your home. I'm the one intruding." Lucas looked at her. Really looked. The way her shoulders folded inward like a letter that had been opened too many times. The way her voice tried to be small even when it was trying to be kind. He let out a long breath. The fight left him just as quickly as it had flared up. "There's a blanket chest in the hallway," he said. "Take whatever you need." Claire hesitated. You sure? He nodded. I'll be outside. He left the house before she could answer. His steps were heavy this time, the front door slamming shut behind him in a gust of wind. Out by the barn, Lucas busied his hands. He cleaned tools that didn't need cleaning, moved crates from one side to the other. He opened the stall doors, checked the hinges, then closed them again. Anything to keep from thinking about that room, about the way it looked now, with her, footprints fresh on the old wood floor. It wasn't her fault, he knew that, but there were things in that room he hadn't touched in years. A scarf still draped over the chair, a photo in a cracked frame, the smell of lavender that hadn't left, no matter how long it had been. Back then, when the fire took half the barn, the town rallied around him, gave him tools, lumber, hot meals. But when the trial started, when the investment fraud tied to his name hit the news, they fell away. Not cruelly, just quietly, like a door closing. Claire hadn't done any of that. She was just trying to make a bed. Lucas ran a hand through, his hair damp with sweat and memory. He'd overreacted. He always did when it came to that room. But the truth he hadn't said, not even to himself, was this. That room wasn't haunted by his wife. It was haunted by the version of himself that had once been a husband. When he came back in, Claire wasn't in the kitchen. He heard soft movement from the hallway, not the bedroom. The front door creaked open and he found her sitting on the steps, knees tucked to her chest, eyes watching the trees. She didn't look up when he sat down beside her. I didn't touch anything, she said quietly. I just stood there. I saw a picture, a scarf. I knew I shouldn't be there. He nodded. I just haven't seen a room like that in a long time. One that still feels like someone loved it. Lucas said nothing for a moment. Then, I haven't been in there in 5 years. Claire looked at him. I sleep in the chair most nights, he added. Easier. They sat in silence. Then Claire asked, not pressing, just wondering. What was her name? Lucas swallowed once before he said it. Emily. Claire nodded. That's a good name. They sat until the sky began to clear, until the clouds lifted just enough to let a single shaft of pale light stretch across the field. Lucas stood. You want that room, it's yours. Claire blinked. I don't want to take that from you. You're not, he said. Just don't move anything. Not yet. She nodded. And in that moment, without knowing why, Lucas Brody took one step closer to being someone he hadn't been in a very long time. Lucas didn't ask again about the room. He didn't have to. Claire moved her things in the next morning. What little she had, folded them neatly on the edge of the old dresser. She didn't sleep in the bed, not yet. Just on top of the quilt, as if honoring something sacred, as if waiting for permission not from him, but from time. Outside, the rain slowed to a mist. The air hung wet and cold, thick with the smell of mud and cedar and old wood. Lucas kept busy in the barn, fixing hinges, reorganizing shelves, pretending that everything wasn't changing just by the fact of her being here. Claire spent her time in the kitchen. She cooked when she could, cleaned in slow, thoughtful movements. Lily, her daughter, was still not with her. Lucas hadn't asked why until the night she brought it up. It was just after dinner. He had made stew, oversalted like always. But Claire didn't complain. They sat across the table, their plates mostly empty, steam curling between them like ghosts of things unsaid. Claire was the first to break it. Her name's Lily, she said softly. She's 6. Lucas looked up, met her eyes. Your daughter. Claire nodded. She's in Oregon, with a friend. I had to make arrangements. It wasn't safe to bring her with me at first. You were flying to her? I was trying to get somewhere to start over. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere with a door that locked and a bed that didn't have memories. She paused. You have both. Lucas looked down at his hands. Rough, cracked. The hands of a man who had once built a house from scratch and now barely held it together. Claire went on. like she'd rehearsed it in her head too many times. I married Evan Malley. I was 24. He was charming, brilliant, said I was the calm to his storm, said all the right things, in all the wrong ways. Lucas's jaw twitched. The name sounded familiar. Too familiar. Claire saw it in his face. You've heard of him? Lucas nodded once. He tried to buy my land 4 years ago, offered triple what it was worth under a shell company. When I said no, he found a way to hit me another way, financially, legally. I lost half the ranch overnight. Claire's lips parted. Her hands trembled slightly on the rim of the mug. I didn't know. Lucas shrugged. Doesn't matter now. It does to me. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was full, like a field left to grow wild after harvest. Not empty, but waiting. Claire reached up, brushing hair behind her ear. That's when he saw it. A faint scar along her jawline, another just below the collarbone. They weren't new, but they hadn't faded. She saw him looking. Didn't flinch, you can ask. Lucas didn't, not out loud, but his eyes stayed on hers, steady and unflinching. He pushed me once, then again, then often, always with words first. That's how it always starts. Control dressed as concern, ownership dressed as protection. Lucas didn't say sorry, he knew better than that. Instead, he stood, walked over to the stove, refilled both their mugs, placed hers gently in front of her, the way you place something fragile but built to. Last, Claire let out a shaky breath. He said if I left, I'd lose Lily, that no judge would believe someone like me. You're not the one who should be explaining. No, but I'm tired of not saying it. Lucas nodded, sat back down. He stared into the fire. After a long while, he said quietly, You ever see burn scars? Claire looked up. Once. Why? He rolled back the sleeve of his flannel shirt. His forearm, once hidden beneath plaid and silence, showed the mottled skin. Shiny, twisted, like melted wax. It crept from wrist to elbow. Barn fire. 5 years ago. I tried to save a horse I shouldn't have kept. My wife ran back inside to get my father's watch. Roof collapsed. Claire's voice caught. Emily? Lucas nodded. I was supposed to be the hero, he said, but I didn't save either. They sat there, the two of them, names with scars, scars with stories, people who had watched everything they'd loved burn and still walked out of the flames, half men, half memory. Claire broke the silence. You kept the tree. Lucas blinked. What? She pointed toward the window, to the field. The lone apple tree, blackened but still standing. Most people would have pulled it out, cleared the land, but you left it. Lucas looked down at his hands again. She planted it. I told her it wouldn't last. Said the soil was wrong, but it grew anyway. He paused. Last season it stopped blooming, but it's still there. Yeah, he said softly. It's still there. Claire leaned, back in her chair, cradling her mug, eyes distant. I think I'm like that tree, she whispered. I'm not blooming, but I'm still here. Lucas didn't say anything. He just nodded, and for the first time since she arrived, Claire smiled. It was small, worn, but it stayed. The sun came out the next morning. Not fully, not brightly, but enough to cast a soft silver over the field and leave streaks of gold on the kitchen windowsill. For the first time in weeks, Lucas didn't wake to the sound of rain. He didn't say anything about it, just nodded to the sky like an old friend had returned for a short visit. Claire noticed it too. She stepped outside without a coat, lifting, her face toward the light, eyes closed, lips parted slightly like she was tasting something long forgotten. Lucas stood on the porch, sipping from a chipped mug, watching. It feels different here, she said, not opening her eyes. Then where? Everywhere else I've run. She turned to him, a small smile tugging at her mouth. You have dirt that feels safe. Lucas raised an eyebrow. That's supposed to be a compliment. It is, she said. You'd be surprised how many places look quiet but don't know how to hold people. He didn't answer, just took another sip and stared at the field. Later that morning, Claire asked if she could help in the garden. Lucas blinked. There isn't one. There could be. He didn't respond right away, but he didn't say no either. They spent the afternoon behind the barn, just beyond the reach of the ruined orchard. The soil was damp but not waterlogged. Claire crouched barefoot, sleeves rolled, hair tied in a knot that kept falling loose. She worked silently, methodically, like someone used to making something from nothing. Lucas shoveled alongside her. Two bodies bent over earth, hers graceful and sure, his solid and worn. After an hour, they had a plot the size of a small room. Claire brushed her hands on her jeans. "You have seeds?" Lucas nodded. He disappeared into the barn and came back with a metal tin. It rattled when he opened it. Some old vegetable starts. A few wildflowers. Claire sorted through the packets like a child with crayons. "What? About a tree?" Lucas hesitated. His eyes drifted toward the far end of the yard where the dead apple tree still stood like a monument. "I don't know if this soil has anything left to give," he said quietly. Claire didn't look up. Maybe it just needs someone to believe it does. Her words sat between them for a long time. That evening they planted the first row, carrots, beans, a stubborn vine that might be squash. The light softened as the sun dipped behind the ridge, casting long shadows across their work. Claire wiped her forehead with the back of her arm. Lucas offered her a bottle of water. She took it, drank, then sat on the step of the back porch. He joined her, their knees nearly touching. After a minute, she said, "Lily would have liked this." Lucas glanced sideways. "She liked the dirt?" "She likes life," Claire said, eyes far away. "She's the kind of kid who talks to worms and names spiders, the kind I don't always know how to raise." "You're raising her anyway." Claire looked down. "Not lately." Lucas didn't argue. He didn't tell her she was doing her best. He just let her sit beside him, in the dirt, in the quiet, where truth didn't need noise to be real. Then Claire stood and brushed off her hands. "Can I borrow one more thing?" Lucas gave a lopsided shrug. "Depends what it is." A shovel. He watched as she walked over to the edge of the orchard, just before the dead tree. She knelt down and dug a small hole. Then, from the pocket of her jacket, she pulled out something small, a sprout barely rooted, wrapped in damp cloth. Lucas stepped closer. "Where'd that come from?" he asked. "Lily planted it," she said. "Back in Oregon. She told me it was a promise seed. Said I had to bring it with me and plant it when I found a safe place." She looked up at him. "Is this that place?" Lucas didn't answer. He just stepped beside her, took the shovel, and helped her dig the hole wider. Together they pressed the tiny root into the soil, covered it, patted it down. When they finished, Claire stood. Her hands were dirty, her cheeks streaked with something, between sweat and memory. She looked exhausted and alive. Lucas bent down, gently tapped the base of the sprout with his finger. "Welcome to Hollow Creek," he said quietly. Claire's breath hitched, just once. They stood in silence, facing the new green thing as the sun finally disappeared. That night, Lucas didn't sleep in the chair. He lay on top of the quilt in the other room, Emily's room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creak of the house, the wind in the eaves. Through the thin wall, he could hear Claire humming. It was a lullaby, off-key, half-remembered, but it was the sound of someone still trying, and it stayed with him, long after the wind died down. The rain returned like it never left. It came quietly at first, a soft tapping on the roof as Lucas washed up the dinner plates, but by nightfall the wind had turned sharp, rattling the window panes and bending the porch light sideways. He pulled the curtain closed, turned off the radio, and checked the locks without thinking. Old habits. Claire sat at the table, Lily's sprout nestled in a small pot beside her, waiting to be planted for real when the roots grew stronger. She watched the flames in the stove flicker like they were holding on to breath. Neither of them spoke much that night. Something in the air had shifted. A stillness with teeth. Lucas felt it deep in his chest. He hadn't heard a car on the gravel, rode in 3 days, but that didn't mean no one was watching. A gut feeling, the kind you don't shake, the kind you trust more than memory. Claire stood. "I'm going to bed." He nodded. She paused at the doorway to the hall. "Lucas?" He looked up. "I don't think it's over," she said. "I think Evan's close." His jaw tightened. He didn't ask how she knew. That wasn't the kind of thing you needed to explain if you'd lived through it. "You're safe here," he said. But the words felt thin, not empty but stretched, like a bridge just beginning to strain under weight. Claire gave a small, tired nod and disappeared down the hall. Lucas stayed up, firelight dancing on the walls like restless ghosts. He checked the front door again. Then the windows. Then, without thinking, opened the drawer beneath the sink. The revolver was still there. Unfired in years but cleaned. Ready. He stared at it for a long time. Then he closed the drawer. The first sound came just after midnight, a light crunch on the gravel outside. Lucas's eyes opened instantly. He moved like a man who'd lived through fire, quietly, with precision, bare feet on cold wood, a flashlight in one hand, his other moving instinctively toward the drawer, but stopping short. He peered through the side window, careful not to move the curtain too far. Nothing. Just rain. But he knew what he heard. Then, another sound. Footsteps, this time on the porch. Lucas moved fast. Down the hallway. He tapped once on Claire's door before easing it open. She was already sitting up, eyes wide. "Stay here," he whispered. She didn't argue. He closed the door behind him and moved toward the front. The porch creaked. Once. Then again. Then silence. Lucas gripped the handle, counted to 3. Opened the door. Nothing. Just wind and rain and the empty stretch of gravel. Then from the side of the house, a shape. A flicker. A man's outline moving behind the barn. Lucas shut the door and ran out the back. The mud swallowed. His steps. Rain slashed across his face. He rounded the barn corner just in time to catch the edge of a coat disappearing behind the old wood pile. "Stop!" he shouted, flashlight beam slicing through the dark. The figure froze. Lucas kept his distance. "You've got 10 seconds to tell me who you are." No answer. Then the man stepped into the beam of light. He was younger than Lucas expected. Late 30s. Expensive coat soaked through, but his shoes, those were city shoes. Not meant for this land. "You're trespassing," Lucas said. The man held up one hand. Not an apology, just to show he wasn't armed. His other hand stayed hidden in his coat pocket. "I'm looking for someone," he said. Calm. Polished. Controlled. Lucas didn't blink. "Wrong place." The man tilted his head. "I don't think so." Lucas stepped forward. "You've got 3 seconds to get off my land." The man smiled, cold, confident. "Her name is Claire Malley." Lucas's pulse spiked. His fingers twitched toward his belt, where a holster used to hang years ago. "I don't know anyone by that name," he said flatly. "She was flying west, with something that belongs to me." Lucas didn't respond. The man's eyes flicked toward the house. "She has a daughter, doesn't she?" "Lily." Lucas's body shifted. It wasn't visible, but something changed. An invisible door had shut behind his eyes. The man took a step forward. Lucas raised the flashlight like a weapon. "This is your last warning." The man studied him for a moment. Then, he smiled again, backed up slowly. "No need for threats," he said. "I'll be back." He turned, walked back down the gravel road as if he had all the time in the world. Lucas watched him until the shape dissolved into darkness. Then he ran. Claire was waiting by the window when Lucas burst in. Her face was pale, lips trembling. "Was it him?" she asked. Lucas didn't answer. She already knew. She backed against the wall, hands trembling. He found me. He found us. Lucas stepped forward, gently took her hands. Hey. She looked at him, blinking fast. I won't let him take you. Either of you. Her breath hitched. He's not going to stop. I'm not going to either. Claire stared at him as if trying to decide whether to believe in that promise, whether to believe in anything at all. Then she whispered, If you get hurt? Lucas shook his head. Then it means I stood between him and someone who needed it. She didn't speak again, just leaned into him, slowly, carefully, like someone learning how to fall toward safety instead of away from it. He wrapped his arms around her, held her against the thunder and the dark. And for the first time, Claire cried, not loud, not broken, but quiet tears for the years no one believed her, for the flight that failed, for the girl waiting far away with a promise seed she might never see bloom. Lucas held her like he'd hold a daughter, a wife, a life worth saving, because maybe this was the moment it changed. Maybe this was where the real story began. The wind carried the smoke before he saw the flames. Lucas had been chopping wood behind the barn when the scent hit. Sharp, chemical, wrong. He froze mid-swing, the axe suspended above the log. The breeze shifted. There it was again, acrid, oily. He dropped the axe. By the time he rounded the house, fire had already reached the far end of the old equipment shed. Flames licked the beams. Hungry and fast, trailing into the night like twisted ribbons of warning. The dry wood caught easily. Too easily. Someone had soaked the boards. Claire burst from the back door, her eyes wide, clutching the small pack she'd kept ready by instinct. Lily's drawings, she gasped. They're in the shed. Claire, Lucas cut her off. His voice, calm but edged. Where's the letter? She blinked. What? The one he wants. The proof. The leverage. Claire's hand went to her coat. Still with me? Lucas nodded once. Good. Stay inside. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. Her throat worked. Lucas, I mean it. He turned and ran toward the fire. The flames clawed higher as he approached, their roar louder than memory, louder than the crack of timber or the scream in his chest that he hadn't felt since Emily. His boots hit the mud, and he didn't hesitate. Not this time. The fire met him, with a searing gust, a heat wave of bitter memory. But he shoved through it, pulled his coat over his face, and dove into the dark mouth of the burning shed. Inside, the air was thick, choking. Wood snapped like bones. He coughed hard, blinking, against smoke. The old shelves were already collapsing. He saw the drawings, Lily's small crayon-colored papers, in a tin box near the workbench. He grabbed it. Then, something shifted, metal falling, fast. Lucas turned too late. A beam cracked overhead. He threw himself sideways, crashing into a stack of old tires. Pain tore across his shoulder, white-hot. But he was alive. He scrambled to his feet, box in one arm, and ran. Outside, the world blurred. Smoke spiraled into the sky. A faint scream echoed. Claire at the window. Lucas stumbled across the lawn and dropped to his knees near the porch. She ran out to meet him. You're bleeding. Later, he rasped, shoving the box into her hands. She opened it. Papers. A bracelet. Lily's tiny handwriting on folded drawings. Claire clutched it to her chest, trembling. Then Lucas looked up. Headlights. A truck, black, unfamiliar, crawling down the gravel path toward the house. Claire stepped back, her face drained. It's him. Lucas stood. Slowly. His knees screamed, but he didn't care. Go inside, he said. Take the letter. Take everything. Upstairs, closet, second panel on the left, crawl space behind it. He won't find you. I'm not leaving you alone with him, she whispered. You're not, he said. You're staying alive, that's the difference. She hesitated. Lucas stepped closer and touched her cheek. Just once. If I don't come back, And that tree grows. Tell her I was there when we planted it. Claire's eyes welled. She nodded once, swallowed her fear, and disappeared into the house. The truck door slammed. Evan Malley stepped out, casual as if he'd come to collect a package. He wore a tailored coat, but the smirk was the same one Lucas remembered from the newspapers. Cold. Surgical. Lucas stood alone at the edge of the porch, arms loose at his sides. He didn't speak first. "I'll say this," Evan said. "You're more stubborn than the last 3 farms." Lucas didn't move. "You're trespassing. I'm taking back what's mine." "She's not yours." Evan laughed. "Everyone thinks they're a hero in the end, don't they?" Lucas tilted his head slightly. "You think this is the end?" Evan's jaw clenched. He stepped forward. "Where is she?" "Gone." "Bullshit." Lucas shrugged. "Nothing here but me. And a promise I intend to keep." Evan reached into his coat. Lucas didn't flinch. The barrel of a gun caught the porch light. Lucas still didn't move. "Can bury you here," Evan said. "You can try," Lucas answered. "But if you shoot me, the cops see your tire marks, your fingerprints, and your motive. Who says I care?" "I do," Lucas said, voice quiet. "Because I know you're kind. You only care when you lose. And today, Evan, you already have." Click. Then a pause. Evan's breath hitched. Rage, calculation. But he didn't fire. A sound broke the standoff. Voices, flashlights, footsteps crunching gravel from behind. 3 trucks rolled up, sheriff's vehicle in front, followed by 2 neighbors. Lucas hadn't spoken to in months. Word spreads fast in small towns. Fire tends to light up more than buildings. Evan looked around. Lucas said nothing. He didn't need to. The sheriff stepped out, hand on his holster. "Evening. We got a call about a structure fire, and a report of a possible threat to one of our residents." Evan's eyes darted. "I suggest you get in your truck," the sheriff said, calm but sharp. "And don't come back." Evan hesitated, then turned, got in, and drove away. Later, Lucas sat on the back steps, a rag pressed to his bleeding shoulder. Claire sat beside him, Lily's tin box in her lap. "You could have been killed," she said, barely louder than the wind. "So could you." She looked at him, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "You didn't hesitate." "I've hesitated too many times before." Claire reached out, took his hand. Lucas didn't pull away. She whispered, "If you had died out there." "I didn't." "But if you had?" He turned to her. His voice broke. "Then it would have meant I was finally standing in the right place." She leaned her head against his good shoulder, her body small but steady. The moon rose, casting pale light over the garden. The sprout still stood, untouched, and the fire hadn't reached the tree. By morning, the shed was gone. Only a skeleton of blackened wood remained, steaming and fragile, like it would collapse if anyone dared breathe too hard. The acrid scent lingered, smoke and old rubber and soaked ash, clinging to every board, every nail, every breath. Lucas stood in the wreckage, shoulders stiff, arms scraped and bandaged in spots Claire could reach. The rest he'd wrapped himself. Badly. He hadn't said much since the sheriff left. Claire hadn't asked him to. Instead, she stood beside him, silent, holding Lily's tin box with both hands. The fire hadn't touched it. A miracle. Or maybe just a sign that someone was still watching. "I'll help clean this," she said softly. "You don't have to. I want to." Lucas nodded once. She set the box down carefully on the porch and picked up a shovel. They spent the morning clearing what they could, hauling splintered beams and piles of charcoal debris into a growing heap beyond the barn. Lucas moved like a machine, quiet, steady, focused. Claire followed suit, though every motion was slower today, heavier. Once their hands touched, reaching for the same broken plank. Claire flinched, not from pain, but from how long it had been since simple touch didn't mean warning. Lucas let her pull back. He didn't apologize, He just kept working. By noon, the sky turned a dull gray. A few drops of rain fell, too lazy to become a storm. Lucas leaned against the porch railing, his breath shallow. Claire brought him water. He took it. "You don't have to fix everything today," she said gently. Lucas gave a dry half-smile. "There's not much left to fix." She opened her mouth to respond but stopped. Not yet. Not here. Instead, she walked to the house. Inside, the kitchen felt hollow. Claire looked around, saw the scorched jacket hanging on the back of the door, the half-burned list of groceries still stuck to the fridge. She moved slowly, like the house itself might crack if she walked too loud. When she passed the bedroom, she paused. Emily's room, still untouched, still sacred. Claire's fingers grazed the doorframe. She didn't enter, but she whispered, "Thank you," and kept walking. She found what she was looking for in a drawer: paper, a pen, a roll of tape. Then she sat at the table, took a breath, and began to write. Lucas found the letter a few hours later, taped to the inside of the front door. Folded neatly. "Lucas, you gave me more than safety. You gave me a place to stand still. That's more than most ever have. But I don't want to bring another fire to your doorstep. I'm leaving tonight. Thank you for everything. Claire, no dramatics. No tear stains. Just a clean break. Like she'd done this before. Too many times." Lucas stood for a long time, staring at the paper. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, without thinking, he walked to the kitchen. He opened the cabinet beneath the sink, grabbed his toolbox, and went straight to the broken window in the hallway, the one near the back steps, cracked since the last storm. Claire had once commented it let in too much cold. He'd nodded, done nothing. Until now. He removed the old glass, measured, fitted a fresh pane, carefully, quietly. As he hammered in the last nail, he realized his hands weren't shaking. He wasn't angry. He was choosing. Outside, dusk crept in. The sky turned the color of ash. Lucas stood on the back porch, wiping his hands on a rag when he saw her. Down by the orchard, her coat pulled tight, head bowed. He walked down the slope without calling out. Stopped a few feet behind her. She didn't turn. "I saw the letter," he said. She exhaled, slow and shaky. "I thought it'd be easier that way." "It isn't. I can't bring Lily back here if there's even a chance he'll return." Lucas looked past her, to the sprout they'd planted together. Its tiny leaves had somehow survived both fire and frost. It tilted toward the fading light like it believed in tomorrow. He spoke softly. "I never fixed that window before, the one you mentioned." Claire glanced sideways. "I don't know why," he said, "but today I picked up a hammer, and I fixed it. First thing I've repaired in 5 years that didn't come with a blueprint." She smiled faintly. "It's just a window." "No," Lucas said. "It's not." He stepped closer. "I can't make this place safe in every way. I can't promise he'll never try again. But I can promise I won't leave the door unlocked. I won't sleep through the warning signs. I won't hesitate." Claire looked down, her voice barely more than breath. "Why?" "Because this time I know what I'm standing for." They stood in silence as the wind stirred around them. Somewhere a bird called once and fell quiet. The tree stood behind them, the new one in front, roots deepening by the hour. Claire finally turned to face him. "No more running?" Lucas shook his head. "Not if we build something worth staying for." She looked at him. Really looked. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out the letter. She tore it in half. Then again. The pieces scattered into the grass. "I hate windows that rattle," she said softly. "Guess we'll need good nails." Lucas smiled, and beside them the sprout held on. They came the next morning. First it was Sheriff Dalton, pulling up in his beat-up patrol truck with a box of nails and a cooler full of sandwiches. Then came Myra from the bakery, her hair still wrapped in a scarf, arms balancing a tray of cinnamon rolls and a bag of coffee filters. By noon, there were 8 people on the property. Lucas stood on the porch, stunned. It had been years since this many people had set foot on his land without legal summons or pity in their eyes. Now there were boots in the gravel, voices calling instructions, and the sound of hammers clapping against fresh wood like a kind of prayer. "Word travels," Sheriff said with a shrug. "Faster than fire, even." Lucas didn't ask who'd told them. He didn't need to. Claire was standing on the back step, Lily's sprout in her hands, watching as someone set new support, beams in place where the shed used to be. Her coat flapped in the breeze. She looked like she was trying to breathe in something she hadn't trusted in a long time. Belonging. Frankie Givens, retired carpenter, 78 years old and twice widowed, stood beside Lucas at the site where the barn met the ash heap. "You ever fix something you thought was too far gone?" Lucas asked. Frankie wiped his brow. "Son, if I only fixed the things that looked fixable, I'd have died of boredom 20 years ago." Lucas cracked a tired grin. Frankie leaned on his cane. "Truth is, most things worth keeping get rebuilt, at least once, sometimes twice. Takes a little sweat and a lot of stubborn." Lucas looked around. A new beam lifted into place. A neighbor he hadn't spoken to in 4 years offered Claire a hammer. Myra was passing out thermoses like a deacon, serving communion. Nail by nail. That was how it started. By afternoon, Claire had traded her coat for gloves. She and Lucas worked side by side rebuilding the side wall of the barn. They didn't talk much, there wasn't time, but their movements were in sync, like they'd been building things together for longer than a few days. At one point, she stopped and looked at him. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes lit. "Do you think this is what a home feels like?" Lucas looked around. Noise, laughter, mud, the smell of cinnamon and sawdust. A girl's drawing taped to a new post, fluttering like a flag. He nodded. "Feels pretty close." Later, as the sun dipped behind the trees, someone brought out guitars. A boy strummed a shaky version of an old folk song. Kids chased chickens around the yard. Someone threw together a bonfire in the field. Claire stood beside Lucas, a blanket around her shoulders, watching the flames. "You didn't ask them to come," she said. "Nope, but they did anyway." Lucas glanced sideways. "I guess people don't always need permission to do the right thing." She smiled softly. "Neither do we." He looked down at her hand, resting lightly against his. He didn't move. When the crowd began to thin and the stars blinked out one by one, Lucas walked Claire back to the porch. The lights inside the house glowed warm behind the window panes he had installed himself just 2 nights ago. At the top step, Claire paused, turned. "You know what scares me?" she asked. Lucas waited. "It's not Evan. Not really. It's that someday Lily will ask me why we stayed, and I won't have enough of a reason." Lucas thought for a long time. Then he said, "Tell her it's where the tree started." Claire's voice was a whisper. "You think that's enough? I think sometimes the things we grow matter more than the things we run from." She looked down. Then slowly she nodded, as if planting something inside her that would take root in time. That night, Lucas didn't fix anything, didn't hammer, didn't measure. He just stood outside under the porch light and looked at what had risen from the ashes. Not perfect, not polished, but possible, and that, he thought, was more than enough. The rain came back on a Tuesday, soft, patient, not the kind that frightened or flooded, just a gentle, persistent tapping on the windows and roof, like it had something kind to say this time. Something to bless. Claire stood barefoot on the porch, her coat unbuttoned, eyes tilted toward the sky. The sleeves of Lucas's flannel shirt swallowed her wrists. She didn't seem to mind. Her hair was damp and curling at the edges. She looked, Lucas thought, like she finally belonged to the weather. Or maybe it finally belonged to her. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and lemon oil. Claire had been baking again. The kitchen was hers now, not because he gave it, but because she filled it with music and motion and soft humming that clung to the rafters like old songs. Lucas watched her from the front door, arms folded loosely, shoulders still stiff from the fire, but healing, like everything else. He cleared his throat gently. "You'll catch cold out there." She turned to him, smiling. "Rain doesn't scare me anymore." Lucas stepped out beside her, pulling the collar of his jacket up. "No. No." She looked past him. "It's just water, and we've already been through worse." He followed her gaze. The apple sprout stood alone in the field. Its leaves shimmered under the rain, thin but steady, taller now. 2 new branches had split from the main stem, one curling ever so slightly toward the old tree that still loomed in the distance, dead, but somehow no longer lonely. Claire nodded toward it. "We should name it." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "The tree?" "Mm-hmm." He thought for a moment. "How about Lily's promise?" Claire's smile changed, softened into something that lived between joy and ache. She nodded. "I like that," she said. "It suits her." They walked down together, boots sinking gently into the soft earth. When they reached the tree, Claire crouched down and brushed the wet soil around the base. She didn't speak. Lucas stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets, watching her like someone watching something sacred without needing to say why. After a long silence, she said, "I wrote her. Told her she could come soon." Lucas nodded. "She'll like it here." "She'll love it," Claire whispered, "because this time, I'll show her what staying looks like." Lucas crouched beside her, resting a hand on the wood stake, holding the sprout steady. "You're not the only one who had to learn that." She looked at him. He didn't look away. "I used to think I was just holding the pieces," he said. "Just surviving the ruins. But now—" Claire tilted her head gently. "Now?" He pressed his palm to the damp earth beside the roots. "Now I think I've started something again." Claire didn't speak. She just slid her hand beside his. Let their fingers touch. Not lace, not grip. Just touch. Like a soft anchor. The rain picked up a little. Not wild, not mean, just steady. Claire leaned her head against his shoulder. "I don't want perfect." "You won't get it," he said with a small smile. She laughed softly. "Good. I just want something real, even if it breaks sometimes." Lucas nodded. "Then we'll build real," he said, "and fix what breaks, nail by nail." That night the house was quiet in the way homes are when they're full of good things. No noise, but full. Claire lit a candle in the kitchen. Lucas repaired the back porch screen. They didn't talk much, but there was no distance between them, only the soft space where peace lives. Before bed, Claire pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket. Lucas glanced up. "Is that—" She shook her head. "Not a goodbye. Not anymore." She opened it. Inside was a drawing. Crayon. Faded from folding, a stick figure family, standing beneath a tree. Lucas reached out, traced the tiny crayon apple drawn on one of the branches. "Lily made this?" he asked. "She did," Claire said. "Last fall." Lucas looked at her, eyes soft. "She drew us before we met," she added. They didn't say anything else that night. Weeks passed. The house grew fuller, not louder, just warmer. Drawings on the fridge, shoes by the door, a second toothbrush in the bathroom. Claire baked on Sundays. Lucas started leaving his bedroom door open, and one day a small car pulled into the gravel drive, and a girl with dark eyes stepped out holding a stuffed bear and a letter with her name on it. Her name was Lily. She ran to Claire, held on tight. Then, looked at Lucas. He crouched and smiled. "I've got something to show you," he said. They walked together to the tree. Lily's eyes lit up. "You planted it." "We did," Lucas said. "But it was your seed." She leaned in close, kissed the stem, and whispered something into the leaves. Lucas didn't ask what it was. Some promises are meant to be between a girl and a tree. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Claire and Lucas sat on the porch. Rain returned. Light and thin, the garden shimmered. Claire took his hand in hers. "Do we say it now?" she asked. Lucas shook his head. "No need," he said. "We just show up tomorrow. And the next day. That's how we say it." She leaned against him. And under the weight of the sky and the rhythm of the rain, the tree stood quietly between them. Not tall, not strong, not yet, but rooted, alive, growing. Maybe it's not about running anymore. Maybe it's about choosing to stay, one quiet, stubborn day at a time. If this story left something with you, a feeling, a breath, a memory, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're building a place for stories that stay, and we'd love to have you here.